It seems like every other day we lose an icon, either from sports or the arts or otherwise. Normally, when my feet hit the ground in the morning, I'm ready to rock. Now it's with trepidation some mornings, if I'm being real, because there's been so much bad news of late and so many losses of iconic figures. Part of me wakes up wondering, oh no, who's next? What's next? And now, tremendously sad news with the passing of MLB Hall of Famer Ryne Sandberg. Not to be crude, but as I said last week, they're dropping like flies out here. Ryne Sandberg, who'd been battling cancer, was still around the Cubs as recently as spring training. And while I try not to overuse the phrase, one of one, he truly was one of one. Truly was one of one in the sense that he was one of the greatest second basemen ever, one of the all-time greatest Cubs ever, and a man who was the very definition of class. As close a thing to baseball royalty in his generation as you could find. Everybody loved him. He was a legend and an icon in Chicago and a legend and an icon around the baseball world. Everybody loved this guy. An absolute wizard with the leather. He won 9 Gold Gloves. A guy who transformed himself into a tremendous power hitter. Think about this for a minute. Back in the day, a second baseman who hit 40 bombs. A middle infielder, a second baseman who hit 40 bombs in the pre-Royd era. And a guy that can go and get you bags. Lots of bags. And on top of that, not only, again, deified in the city of Chicago, but beloved across the nation. You could just see the sadness or feel the sadness permeating this weekend at the Hall of Fame ceremonies, as those who already knew his fate were bracing for and expecting for the very worst. So baseball lost an all-time great, and as cliche as it is, an even better human being. And if you're from our generation and used to watch him, you know how great this guy was. What a great, great player he was. What a great human being he was. Very, very sad, sad thing. Joining me to share his thoughts on this, as well as a number of other topics, is my dude, Adam Rank. Adam, good to have you on. What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you. It is unbelievable because usually when you have celebrity deaths, they come in 3 and it's, hey, and it's one of those things, and not to be flippant. And I heard earlier today, we were talking about the old death pool and everything like that. It was usually waves of 3, but the icons, as you mentioned, the Ozzy Osbourne one, I needed some time. Like I still wanted to like take a little breath from that and like really just dive into how much that meant to me. Then you had Hulk Hogan, and regardless of what happened with him later on in life or whatever, but still a big part of the 1980s. And again, with Ryne Sandberg. And unfortunately, when the players started showing up and Ryne Sandberg jerseys and everything like that, you knew it wasn't a great sign, unfortunately. And we'd all been hoping for the best over the last couple of years, but it really did seem like the end was going to be near. And it's one of those things, because I tweeted that out last night, talking about how much that Ryne Sandberg meant. And Kyle Brandt and I kind of went back and forth a little bit on X and everything like that. And Kyle is a Chicago guy through and through, who is in Chicago throughout his prep years until he ended up going on and playing football at Princeton. I moved out of the Chicagoland area when I was 5, but Ryne Sandberg was still such a huge part of growing up because not everybody, ironically, our family did not have WGN, but the house next door, the Zeller family, had WGN. And our summers were getting up super early in Corona, California, going out there, playing as many sports as possible before the stage 3 smog alert hit, before it got to be 100 degrees. And then right around 11 o'clock was when, because the Cubs were still playing day games back in the day. And you would watch Harry Carey, Steve Stone, and Ryne Sandberg, this incredible player. Like, you couldn't have put it any better because it is such an anomaly. Like, he was sort of like a unicorn in the fact that second basemen were not power hitters. Him and Bobby Grich were 2 guys who were like legitimate power hitters from a typically black hole of a position. But he was just such a great player, such a classy guy, and you couldn't help but root for him. And I think that everybody who grew up with cable had an affinity for the Cubs, loved Ryne Sandberg. And I think there's a similar sentiment with the Braves with Dale Murphy and players like that. I was never really a big TBS guy. I think a lot of it had to do with growing up in the Chicago, being attached to the Chicagoland area. It's a tough one, man. This is one we always hesitate because you're always like, I don't normally get rocked by celebrity deaths, but the ones over the last couple of weeks have really hit home and really hit really close to home.
No, I agree with all of that. And, Dale Murphy, another great guy. Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome guy. And when you think about second baseman, another one that jumps to mind and I always think about this because the stat to me was always such an anomaly. A second baseman with 40 home runs. A second baseman with 40 home runs in a day when second baseman did not go deep. Davey Johnson hit 43 home runs in 1973. Davey Johnson used to come on the program back in the day. I always got a kick out of him. But you mentioned Kyle Brandt. And KB is Chicago through and through. How did KB take that? I mean, KB, of course, was famous
Right.
for telling that gal on MTV,
Tanya.
it's not Ryan, it's Ryne. Did he do that nostalgically? I didn't get into this with KB, so I don't really know, and I didn't see the exchange. Is it too soon? Did he take that too hard? Because everybody else was making that joke, but KB was the originator of that very line.
Yeah, I honestly did not really want to get too. I think it's too raw for him, to be quite honest.
Look what he did. Look what he posted.
Yeah.
I went to my first Cubs game at 8 years old. Ryne Sandberg doubled, tripled, and was the coolest person I had ever seen in my life. Sad, terrible news. It's not Ryan, it's Ryne. So he did as a tribute.
He did make the homage.
He did.
So I did. That's his story to tell and everything like that. But and somebody who, whenever you obviously know Kyle very well, it's how much these things really matter. And I think about all the kids, but the best part about Ryne Sandberg, again, so Kyle Brandt had this connection. He would go to the games. That was his guy. He would do all that stuff. It's funny because my parents, even though I converted my parents to Angel fans, they still held out and they were Cub people. They went down to San Diego for the 1984 NLCS, which did not end very well at all. To the point of like my dad hated Steve Garvey before, really hated him after 1984. And this was after too. Like I had converted him.
So did Don Sutton. So did a lot of Dodgers.
So did a lot of people. And so my dad really went through it because in 82, he was there with the Angels blowing it against the Brewers. 84, the Cubs blew it. 86, the Angels blew it. And then 89, the Cubs blew it again. I'm surprised that my dad even watched baseball after that. But Ryne Sandberg, but the thing of it is like, there are so many guys, and there were people who were in the comments to all these tweets and everything of like, hey, I didn't grow up in Chicago, but
right.
We all loved him. Like that was our guy. When you look at like players of a generation, when you think of like the face of a generation that little kids loved, it is Ryne Sandberg. And again, you don't have to be from Chicago to have that sentiment. You don't have to be from Chicago to have seen Ryne Sandberg play 100 times every year because everybody watched those games. And this was, it was in a, not
Dude,
like it was
Alex
an event,
Cora
but-
said as much. Alex Cora said it on the program. That if you saw WGN, then you saw that. And then it's almost like it was America's team. And then everybody could see just the class that he played with and the kind of player that he was. It really was something. Just kind of a sidebar. When I started in Santa Barbara, I was on local radio and I was trying to make a name and trying to make a mark and trying to differentiate myself and create separation. So I started to chase national figures and I got it in my head that I had to interview Harry Carey. So I started to go out to Harry Carey. And then believe me, that was late 80s. Harry was still Harry. Harry was very much Harry Carey. And it took some doing. And I think of all places, I want to say that I actually found him in the desert one time, and he was with his wife, and she answered the phone, and this was a landline kind of world back then, right? We would set up our interviews on landlines, and she answered the phone, and I got to him, and he did the interview. And don't think for a second that didn't go right on my resume, right on my demo tape, and it was really a wild thing. And like he did it, and he didn't know some guy in Santa Barbara in local radio, but he was awesome to talk to. He was awesome. Harry was awesome to talk to and had time. So I'm kind of sidebarring right now, but when you think about the legends of the game, the legendary broadcasters of the game, it just was kind of cool as a young broadcaster coming up that somebody like that made time for it and did the interview and did a really good interview.
Yeah, when I went back to Chicago, like one of the first times as an adult, one of my own, it must have been a work trip, but like did the thing of like, I got to go to Harry Carey's. I'm sorry. Like, I know my producer, because it was an NFL thing, because my producer was like, really? And I'm like, we got to, like, we have to do it. We got to go to the GOAT, the Billy Goat. We got to do all this stuff. I go, I'm so sorry. But he was down with it and it was cool. But it is something special. Even now, like when I go, if I'm in downtown Chicago, I'm like, let's go to Harry's. Like, it's fun and it's iconic and everything like that. And it just speaks like Harry, the cool thing, like we live in Southern California. We grew up in Southern California. We had the greatest announcers of all time. We had Vin Scully. We had, why am I blanking on everybody? We had Dick Enberg. I mean, Dick Enberg was a guy that we had. Chick Hearn. Bob Miller.
Do you know what? You've probably heard me tell. Look, because you know this show as well as anybody other than Stucknut. You probably heard me tell a story. I played Little League at Sherman Oaks Little League, and Dick Enberg would pull up to watch his son play, and I was like, "Wow, man!" And Dick would be way down the parking lot and just kind of sitting on the hood of his car watching, and we'd be like, "Holy crap, man! Dick Enberg in Sherman Oaks in the Val." And you know what's really ironic? Of all the people I've talked to, and I've tried to run down all my idols and all the people I look up to, I don't know. Excuse me, I don't know that I've ever interviewed or did ever interview Dick Enberg, which is strange. And we came close a couple of times. Somebody was a go-between in San Diego, and it almost came together. And he knew who I was, and I liked that he knew who I was. But I don't think I ever actually had a conversation or an on-air interview with Dick Enberg. But man, I never forgot that he would come to our Little League games in Sherman Oaks Little League, and that he'd sit on the hood of the car and watch. Man, that was good times.
So amazing. Did he end up calling Padre games towards the end or something like that?
Or
like
Chargers,
that was cool.
Chargers or Padres.
Yeah, like he started coming back and getting back to it, and just the amazing announcers. But it's funny though, because Dick Enberg and Vin Scully, like professional, like really like professional, like and Harry was not of like that mold, but still great, and you still loved him, and you still loved everything about it. And before you were too young to know what was going on in the booth, you're like, oh, he's just he acted like too many of my relatives in Chicago who now again
on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Oh my gosh. So one time I remember this. So my cousin Renee was getting married, and her groom, Mike, he was like, I'm a kid, you know, and he's almost berating me in this kitchen about how great Ryne Sandberg was. Cause like, I don't know what I said to start this off. And he was sitting, he gets his, you know, he's got a couple of old styles in him. And he's like, hey, you give me a team of Ryne Sandbergs and I'll take on your team of Babe Ruth. And like as a punk, like 11-year-old, maybe 12.
Beard? Did you have a beard yet?
No, I didn't have a beard then. I did have long hair though, but I didn't have a beard yet. And I go, but Babe Ruth pitched, and the evening did not go well after that. I'm not saying a table was.
You know why? Because you were a 12-year-old Adam Rank. You tried to Adam Rank him, man, and he didn't like that. Mike didn't like that. So whatever happened to Mike and his old styles?
You know what? Good guy, good father, and everything like that. But I'm sure I've not talked to him today. But I'm sure like devastation, because as much as, you know, it's crazy because obviously Michael Jordan beloved around the world, Walter Payton beloved around the world, and like Ryne Sandberg, like these iconic people in the Chicagoland area. But there's something about baseball players.
No, there's something about sports though in that town, right? You tell me. You would know better than me, but I've always believed this. Look, if you win in most sports towns, you go back, you don't pay for drinks, you don't pay for meals. However, if you win in Chicago, it's almost different than anything else. No offense, New York. No offense, Philly. No offense, Boston. But Chicago, there's just something about being the guy in Chicago